everybody. Welcome into the Unsealed podcast, Wings of the Eagle. Christopher is me. Please contact me if you like at Manti4 on the X platform. As you see below, please do like and share this, especially on the YouTube channel of Wings of the Eagle. Hit the little bell to be notified. A lot of people say, oh, I didn't know you were on. You got to hit the bell. All right, you got to like, well, all that stuff. Share is the number one best thing you can do. So please share this with someone right now. Hit the share button. Share the address to the YouTube, whatever. Wherever you're watching, I welcome you, love you, and let's do this. So I'm trying to still kind of figure out what happened the other night. And I know a lot of my friends feel the same. So feel free to chime in and tell me what you're thinking. The other night, Tuesday night. Yeah. So President Trump was hosting Benjamin Netanyahu for meetings, and they had a press conference afterwards. Pretty normal stuff. And then he started saying stuff like, as if the Gaza Strip was Atlantic City. Right? We're gonna build this up. We're gonna take over. We're gonna make it like the Riviera. We're gonna give millions or so many jobs are gonna show up, and the economy is gonna boom. And like, what are we talking about here? Is this is like some new land that we Trump Enterprises just acquired or something? Like, wait a minute, this is another country. Free at last. Hey, Tyrannosaurus is free at last. Thank God Almighty. You're free at last. Yeah, she got herself in trouble there yesterday. Who knew? You can get in trouble on X, but whatever. So anyway, Mr. Trump has said this stuff, and he said things like the United States is going to, what did he use words like take over or own it or like things like that. I'm sure the intention was to put people at ease. But I'm not sure what the intention was, basically. Because it's another country. Technically it's Israel. I mean, it's a really sordid, complicated history of Gaza. And if you go all the way back to the Old Testament, Gaza, the Philistines, you remember the Philistines, right? Goliath and all that. Thanks, Bri. I share now, watch later. Roger that. That's great. Thank you. All right, it goes all the way back to David and Goliath, like the Philistine tribes, those peoples were always in what we call Gaza. And even a little further up, like Ashkelon and stuff like that. But anyways, that's where their land always was. So they do have a claim to it. And then after 1948 or 1967, of course, Israel had to fend off invasions from all their neighbors, most of their neighbors, and expanded their territories to say you can't do this anymore. So whatever. And to the point where Gaza was such a problem that Egypt administered it for many years. So it was never part of Egypt, but they were responsible for it. It's the deal that Israel and Egypt came up with. But everyone knew that the people who lived there were not Egyptians, even though they were given Egyptian citizenship and whatnot. They were a different people group, and to this day, nobody wants them. All their neighbors don't want them there because they know what is the truth. They're not going to identify as Egyptians or Saudis or Jordanians or whatever. And they're always going to want to do kinetic, religiously motivated things to go back. So all we're left with is we're going to ask the people who live in Gaza, which is, you can't get an exact number. Some people say it's as low as 1 million. Some people say it's as high as 2 million. So let's just split the difference. Let's say 1.5 million people. You can't forcibly reload. What are we talking about here? The Holocaust? The Indian tribes being, genocide and all that stuff. Then all this stupid talk about genocide up till now has been nonsense. But if you're actually talking about moving 1.5 million people against their will, well, now we're talking about it more realistically, and nobody wants that, right? Donald Trump wants wins, right? He wants victories. He wants to say, I did that, and look how good that is. Look how great that turned out, right? So again, I'm not exactly sure what his goal was, but I watched the press conference after, and I heard Donald Trump's words were very different than Benjamin Netanyahu's words. Netanyahu kind of just like nodded along, and then when it was his turn to speak, he said the things he's always been saying about the war has to end, but when Hamas is completely defeated and disarmed, and all these things that are common sense. Netanyahu and the Israeli government has never said all the Gazans have to leave, because they know it's not feasible. Number one, you can't just do that. Go where? Anyway, so that's what he said. But now a lot of folks are saying, wait a minute, it's a big deal because it's a huge change from what anyone has ever said before. It's true. Like, okay, well, as the president of the United States, he's the most powerful voice outside of the region, certainly, and even within the region. America, look, we spend a lot of money on all the sides. That's the truth. Militarily, economic, humanitarian, whatever. We spend so many millions on every party in the Middle East. It's ridiculous. So, yes, we're invested, we're involved, we're physically there, militarily in some places, obviously. So we're very intertwined with that whole situation. So when the president makes proclamations or policies, then they have to listen, or they have to deal with it. They don't have to accept it, which no one has, to my knowledge, by the way. Immediately, most of the Arab countries are like, nope, bad idea, and I don't want them. And Saudi Arabia flatly has come out now and say there is no deal like that, unless we're talking about a Palestinian state, the two-state solution thing. They've been very consistent about that all along. There will be no normalization with Israel until there's a two-state solution or whatever. And that just means another country right next to Israel, another Muslim jihadi country. So we're kind of stuck right there, like always. And that's why some people think this is a prophetic thing. Oh my gosh, this is America's going to come in. We're going to invade, basically. We're going to have troops there. We're going to set up this stuff, and all the bad people are going to go away. And now we're going to move toward the third temple being built. This is it. I've heard, you've heard that, I'm sure. I'm going to be Professor Pump the Brakes here, okay? As usual, I think I am. Because remember, the main issue we're talking about, what is like, what prophecy is prophecy being fulfilled? Yes, it's, my gosh, this is it. This is what? Show me the prophecy you're talking about. That's my big thing. Okay, if you think the Bible's one of these things that it speaks of, the end times or whatever, is happening, okay, that's fine. Show me what you're talking about. Which scripture are we talking about? And then we can look at it, and then you can accept or reject that. But the blanket claims like this is prophetic don't mean anything. You should reject that. I reject it. Just because you're using your sense, your common sense, your discernment. If you're a Christian, you're supposed to discern the Spirit. You're supposed to discern, especially if you're talking about something that is written in our common book. Okay, the Bible is our common book. Millions and millions of Christians throughout history read the same thing. And this is our faith. This is where the foundation is, right? Our confession of faith in Jesus, and then the written word that we have passed down to us, that's faithful and true and all that. So if we're talking about the Bible, okay, then show me which part are you talking about. There are things in the Bible about Gaza, and there is a judgment coming from God on that area, like Jeremiah and other prophets. This is Old Testament, okay? Some people assign it to the past. That has already happened. Again, this is like a general argument or debate. in the Christian world? How do you view basically all kind of prophecies in terms of, the day of the Lord and the judgment of God against the enemies of Israel, right? I can say blanketly that has not occurred because they're still there. God doesn't fail. When God judges something forever, it's over. When he removes people from a place, they're removed. Or whatever. If this word is going to happen, it's going to happen. No two ways about it. Anyway, so yes, there is stuff about Gaza in there, but here's the main. I just want to point you to that. If that's your standard, if the Bible's your standard, and by the way, please feel free to chime in here and ask whatever, make any kind of comment or question or suggestion, like Mr. David Smith here has timed in on YouTube, and I'll get to you in just a second, David. Thank you, man. Taryn as well. Okay, here's the base reality. You don't have to be a Bible scholar or whatever. Just crack it open. And if you need help, I understand from teachers. I've taught about this a lot. Other people have as well. The base starting point for what or should we be looking at to say, okay, this is prophecy. This is the deal that we're looking for. This temple is now coming. Israel is in a place where there's great success and their enemies have been whatever. And now it's prophetic. Okay. The temple being built is not just out of nowhere. There is no just finger snap. One day it's there. It's but based in reality. And what God says, read Revelation 13 for yourself. The first part of it, for first few verses, and read Daniel chapter 7 for yourself, and realize that what we call biblical geography is what matters, right? We have to see a very simple thing happen before we get into all this. And there's a process to get here, but at least let's agree on this. Hello, Ann. I see Stephen. What's up, friends? I'll get to all your comments, I promise. There are entities known by animal names in Revelation 13 and Daniel 7. The lion, the lamb, and the lion, the bear, and the leopard. These are countries, nations, kingdoms, people groups. Not random ones, not mysterious ones. We know exactly who they are. They're the modern countries of Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. I include Syria in there as well because the ancient Babylonian Empire included parts of Syria, so I usually throw that in, but whatever. In other words, before we talk about prophecy, before we talk about the temple, before we talk about the final 7 years, before we can talk about any of that, we must agree and understand that unless we see Iraq, Iran, and Turkey not just together on some project, but one entity with one leader or their three leaders are totally in agreement. In other words, there's no divisions. It's one thing. There's still distinct, Arabs that in Iraq and Persians and in Iran and, Turks up in Turkey and Kurds in all three. But they're one unit. They're basically one country. And that is nowhere close to the reality now. And you say, well, wait a minute, what does that have to do with Israel? Everything. Because that is the only way when those three are not fighting anymore and are in total agreement, is the only way that's even possible to talk peace with Israel. I don't care. Well, it doesn't matter, and I care, but it doesn't matter what Saudi Arabia says or doesn't say about Israel or normalize relations or whatever. It's irrelevant. They're not part of that beast. Saudi Arabia is not part of the beast kingdom. I think there's something else, but they're not part of that. They're not the lion, the leopard, or the bear. And they're not even Egypt, which is brought in. If, again, we go to other parts of the prophets. And we'll find Egypt gets in on it as well, right, in that 7-year period for the temple and all that. So if you don't see those, forget Egypt even right now. So it doesn't even matter what they say. If you don't see those are the three main forces. Is Iran making nice with Israel right now? No. Is Turkey? No. Iraq? Who knows what the heck Iraq is? I don't even know what it is. It's so fractured. But the fracture is the opposite condition of what we're going to need to see. Okay? So before we talk about any of this stuff being prophetic, I don't care what Trump does or doesn't do. I don't care what agreements are signed. I don't care what plans there are. I don't care who's fighting or invading who. If the lamb, again with the lamb, the lion, the bear, and the leopard, if they're not together, we're not there yet. I mean, together, or like Sunni and Shia, like that is over. That means that's together. And I believe there's a very clear path to how we get there, which is war. Iran starts a war, Turkey finishes it. That's how they become one. Okay, but are we there yet? Nope. That's why we can't. That's why I think pumping the brakes is appropriate at times like these. And we all want the Lord to return if we're Christians. And we all want peace. We all want, hopefully, we all want this stuff to be over with. We all want the millennium. We all want the good things that eventually come, but we're given the certain things that we should know. And don't depart from it. Don't leave it. Don't question what's in there. You know what it says, so believe it. Okay. Now that I said that, let's see what people are saying. Hello, David Smith. David says, this could be the precursor to Ezekiel 38 and 39 because Israel is supported to be a land of unwalled villages and be prosperous. And prior to this war, that could be said because there were walls. Okay. And then he follows up and says, I meant to say prior to war, it was not a land of unwalled villages. Right. And Taryn, I think, is chiming in this as well. If this is in any way more than talk, might it be moving Israel towards the land of unwalled villages? Okay. There you go. Let's bring up David there. The land of unwalled villages is because exactly what you're saying. They're sick of war. There's a deal made for all their enemies to lay down their arms. That's called the covenant with death in the grave. Isaiah tells you about it. It tells you exactly what it's about. It's about Jerusalem, the final status of Jerusalem. Well, yeah, that is what it's about. And Ezekiel 38 and 39 is both halves of the last 7 years. That covenant, that peace deal, everything's a precursor, David, if you know what I mean, isn't it? I'm kind of done with that talk. It's not valuable to me. It doesn't help me. I don't think it helps Bible students at all. It definitely doesn't help the people who don't know the Lord and don't know prophecy to say this is a precursor to this or that. What does that mean? It could go on for years. Right? So I'm not looking for a precursor. I'm looking for fulfillment. So Ezekiel 38, the land of unwalled villages, happens because they signed the covenant with death in the grave. The 7-year deal. For the first 3.5 years of the 7, they feel finally at peace. And why would they feel that way? This is just to bring the question up here. Why would they feel that way? Because they actually have assurances, not from the United States, who is nowhere near the Middle East, who's not in the Bible, not just from Gaza, which is a minor thorn in the side compared to all the rest of the countries around them. They can only feel at peace to the point where they're not putting up walls anymore, or whether around Gaza, around the West Bank, Lebanon, right? All that. Houthis in Yemen firing missiles at them. That's the point. They're going to be a land of unwalled villages when all the surrounding nations promise to be at peace with them. Nothing, right? That's it. Is even if Gaza were solved tomorrow somehow, magically, and all the jihadis changed their mind or left, and they'll never come back. That was close. Okay, well, what about Lebanon? What about Syria? What about Iraq? What about Iran? What about Yemen? What about Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood? What about all that? What about ISIS? What about, okay? It's not over by a long shot. Their enemies are everywhere. The reason why it would be a huge prophetic moment when the Iraq, Turkey, and Iran get together is because they're the ones with the power. They're the ones who can control all these things. All the Shia terrorists are funded and financed and helped by Iran. Almost every Sunni terrorist in the world is either backed, or financed, supported in one way or another by Turkey or Iraq. So those are the ones that have to get in on it. There's no other way. So the land of unwalled villages thing is contingent 1,000%. Okay, not a little bit, 100,000%. I know that's not good math. On those three nations being in on, and frankly, Egypt has to be on it, and frankly, Jordan has to be on. Jordan has to be in on it because they're the ones, better or for worse. They made a deal. Israel made a deal with Jordan decades ago that Jordan controls the Temple Mount. Did you know that? This is why it's such a big deal where people go up to, oh my gosh, we can't pray on the temple. I've been there. Okay. I was up there. And yes, I prayed. They didn't even know. But the point is, the reason why it's a big deal and oh my gosh, all the Jews are going up there to pray. So it's because Jordan owns it. Israel agreed to that. They still agree to it. So for that, reality has to change. Jordan has to either give up the Temple Mount or come to an agreement where from now on, we come to a new deal. We're not Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, Iraq, Iran, all of us who used to be your enemies and want to attack you won't. Then, and even though it's faulty and we know it's not reliable and it's going to fail, but that is the only point at which Israel will become that land of unwalled villages. Stephen, 7 to 12. Hello, Stephen, 7 to 12. On YouTube says Zechariah 9:7 is interesting regarding Gaza. Well, okay. What's that say? Let's see here. Pulling up our Bible so we could all look. Old Testament, Zechariah chapter 9. And by the way, we taught on Zechariah a couple months ago through this very chapter, verse by verse. Check it out. Go into the history of Wings of the Eagle channel. You'll find it. I will take away the blood from his mouth and the abominations between his teeth, but he who remains, even he shall be for our God and shall be like a leader in Judah, and Ekron shall be like a Jebusite. That's about Gaza. I mean, verse 6, a mixed race shall settle in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of the Philistines. If that's what you mean. Even up to verse before, it talks about Gaza. Ashkelon shall see it in fear. What's this whole thing about? The burden or the oracle or prophecy of the word of the Lord against the land of Hadrach, which its focus, or Damascus is its resting place or its focus. For the eyes of all men and all the tribes of Israel are on the Lord. Well, we're not there yet. Also against Hamath, which borders on it, against Tyre and Sidon. Now we're talking about Syria. We're talking about Lebanon, Tyre and Sidon. For Tyre built herself a tower, heaped up silver like dust and gold like the mire of the streets. Behold, the Lord will cast her out and will destroy her in the power of the sea, and she'll be devoured by fire. We're talking about, okay, overthrowing Lebanon. I mean, that's a real problem still. It's not now. Ashkelon shall see it in fear. They're going to see what happened to Lebanon and then be afraid. Gaza shall also be very sorrowful. So it's not just Gaza. Gaza is a city. And Ashkelon is part of Israel right now, not the Philistines. And Ekron, for he dried up her expectations, her hope. Gaza will lose her king, and Ashkelon will no longer be inhabited. Well, who's the king of Gaza? Hamas? Is that what we're saying? Okay. And Ashkelon shall not be inhabited. Well, Ashkelon is inhabited by Jews right now. Anyways, that's what Zechariah says. So I don't know if that's really appropriate at this point to look there for this. Covenant with death and grave. What scripture? Well, you've got Revelation chapter 6, the fourth horseman. And you've got Isaiah. I'll read it to you. Why can I never remember that exact place? 21. That's what I get for not having the book in front of me. Say 28. Okay. Your covenant with death. Isaiah 28. Behold, I'll lay a stone, Zion, a stone for a foundation. Try a precious cornerstone. We know that it's about Jesus. Whoever believes will not panic. Also, I will make justice the measuring line and righteousness the plummet, and hail will sweep away the refuge of lies. The flood waters will overwhelm the hiding place. Your covenant with death will be annulled. Let's go up more. The word of the Lord, precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little, that they might go and fall backwards, be broken and snared and caught. Therefore, hear the word of the Lord, you scornful men who rule the people in Jerusalem. Now, this is talking to the Jewish leaders. Netanyahu, basically, okay? Because you have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with Sheol we are in agreement. When the overflowing scourge or judgment passes through, it won't reach us. For we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood we have hidden ourselves. That is the covenant with death and Sheol. Daniel chapter 9 talks about the covenant that with the many, that this little horn, the Antichrist, will make. That is it. And it's because Israel, the leaders in Jerusalem, are trying to make peace and says when judgment comes, it's not going to touch us because we're safe. We are safe now. That's why they can build the land of unwalled villages. Okay. David says, in some ways, Trump I'm just going in order here of the comments, guys. Don't. That's why. In some ways, Trump resembles the Antichrist. One, he will do a peace treaty with many, which is what I just said, Daniel 9:7. There it is. So he'll be trusted by Israel, like Trump, and he will be a deceiver like Trump. That's kind of right. That's kind of right. I don't know if Israel will. I'm not sure trust is the right word, other than, but when the final deal does come, when the covenant with death in the grave does happen with the real Antichrist, and of course we know Americans can't be the Antichrist. Okay, so it's not Trump. It wasn't Obama. It's not going to be the next one, if there is a next one. But it's not really about trust, and it's definitely not about Israel accepting him as some Messiah, which is a lot of folks erroneously are waiting for. It's not in the Bible. They just agree because they see the proof in the pudding, as it were. So they can actually deliver on the promise. The ones who are coming to them, because you're going to have one representative called the little horn, the Antichrist, who's representing 10 different nations now. 10. Not just 3 that I mentioned, but those are easy to identify and look at as watchmen, as Christians who care about these things. But there's actually 10 total and 1 spokesman. So they appoint this one to speak for them all and to guarantee to Israel that, yes, all of these countries are serious. None of them are going to attack you. That's the deal. None of them. not just Gaza or whatever, and it's not a mediation from some other third party. The Antichrist character is not a third party. He is the Assyrian. He's from these lands. He's from the land of Iraq or Turkey. Maybe Iran, probably not. But that's it. Okay, so he's from this. He's from there. He has a very personal connection with those main countries because that's how it gets done. And he can say, maybe he's an Arab, but my friend Mark Davidson thinks he's an Arab from Syria. He's absolutely convinced that that's what he will be. So Gog of the land of Magog, you can say, okay, well, he's actually Turkish. Maybe he's a Turk. Maybe he's a Kurd because the Kurds are in all these places. So anyway, point is somewhere in there, but definitely not an American making, trying to cut a deal or whatever. But you can look at him in that way, that like a type of what might happen. You might. Taryn says it just feels like Hamas is too psycho to ever enter into the covenant with death. Well, I agree. Then again, they're not a country. Right. They're a militia, basically. And again, part of this, if we study, especially Isaiah 19, but Daniel 11, there's a lot of infighting, like I think what you're talking about. There's a lot of infighting among the, not Israel, but the other side of the deal, the other covenant signees, about what to actually do about this and how far we're willing to go and so on and so forth. You see that in, I think, Ezekiel as well, right? Egypt has problems with it. They're different. Some people say the Saudis are in there, or somewhere in Yemen or in Africa. Like there's consternation for jihadis all over the world to lay down their arms. Well, because the only way they would do that is if they have a caliph. And the khilafah is back, the caliphate is back, then they have to obey. Religiously. Hamas is, let me read what you wrote before that. Okay, so you're seeing no point in watching for every single possibility before any major events take place. Fair enough. Yeah, that's how I think, It does go on forever doing that. Freaking out constantly about things that haven't happened yet. That's right. It's just not healthy for us. Hamas is so psycho. All the Islamic nations don't even want Gazans in their country, right? It's difficult to imagine them including them all, including Hamas in the covenant with death strategy. Other Islamic nations just seem to want Hamas there in Gaza, and they vent their fury on Israel. It seems logical that Hamas will not be part of it at that point. They might be dismantled by that point. But again, I think it's, to me, the easiest solution to that is to say there's a caliphate now, and you have to respect the caliph because you're a Muslim, so they will have to obey. Bondservant, hey, what's up? Amos 1, Zephaniah 2 are oracles or words against Gaza and others, right? There's some of the other prophets, like I mentioned, Jeremiah earlier. Those are two of the others. All seem to be pointing the day of the Lord or at the wrath of God. That's right. I agree with that. In other words, where we see the Lord doing something, a judgment happening against Gaza and the residents of Gaza, it seems to be all at the day of the Lord and not before that. And I hope we understand what the day of the Lord means. The day of the Lord means the return of Jesus. It's over. That's the end. The wrath of God. He comes with the wrath of God. Jesus brings the wrath of God. Lawrence Thomas, what is up, brother? Isaiah 46, 11 to 13. What's that say? I'm in Isaiah 28 now. Let's get over there. Bum, 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 bum. That's my page turning music. Okay. 46. The verse before that, I'm God, there is no other, declaring the end from the beginning. It's an awesome scripture, and we taught Genesis based on that. Declare the end from the beginning, in the ancient times, things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, I will do my pleasure. Here's 11. Calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a far country. Indeed, I have spoken it. Also, I'll bring it to pass. I purpose it. I will do it. Listen, you stubborn-hearted who are far from righteousness. I bring my righteousness near. It shall not be far off. My salvation shall not linger. And I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. Okay, Lauren. So it's what do you mean by that? Referencing that? I send a foreigner from the east. Well, the east is not the west, right? America's on the west. From the east would be from Iran or Babylon, like Iraq. Okay, follow up if I misunderstood you there, my brother. Hamas is not a country, but what wouldn't they have to be in order to get Israel a false sense of peace? They'd have to agree, yeah, or not be there. Is Isaiah, Jeremiah refer to that area as Philistia, I believe. That's true. Yep. But all points to the time of wrath or during the Great Tribulation time. I agree. That's correct. So let's not jump the gun there. In Zephaniah, it says Gaza will end up being pasture land for the Jewish shepherds. And clearly, now, if that is before the return of Jesus, if you place that before the return of Jesus, then that definitely has to be in the last 7 years, I would think. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll clip that. Right, Taryn? That sounds pretty good. Freaking out about things that haven't happened yet is unhealthy for us. It is. Definitely. Bond Servant says, this might sound out of the box. Oh, I like these. Okay. But that Santorini volcano field waking up big time could send a tsunami as far as the Israeli coast. That's true. Well, do volcanoes cause tsunamis? Earthquakes cause tsunamis. Is it possible that it could happen cleaning out Gaza? And of course, the whole coastline of Israel up the coast. I wonder how the Arabs would see that. Oh, like from the Lord, like from God, some kind of judgment. Maybe. Somebody help me. Can you get a tsunami from a volcano eruption? I don't know. Are earthquakes and volcano eruptions like related? I didn't think so, but maybe. Somebody help me out here. Okay. Very good thoughts. That area may have been responsible or part of the Exodus events. Responsible for part of the Exodus. Do you mean when they tried, well, the original plan was to go straight up, but they had to turn around and go another way because they wouldn't be let through the Philistine areas? I think that you're probably what you mean, right? Which would be a good point. Excellent point. Okay, so keep if folks have more thoughts, please feel free to type it in. Now is the time to do that. By the way, please share this with, if you're on X, share it on X. Fine. The place though is for sure the Wings of the Eagle YouTube channel, because that has the biggest reach right now, and it helps support the ministry with a very, very small monetization. I think we're at $30 a month, I think, on that. Not joking. But anyways, use that if you can. Much obliged. And if you need to support, hey, we're a small operation here. We're a single member LLC. That's what Wings of the Eagle is. And so we're trying our best against all odds to continue, and we need your support in that. So please, if you can give something, I know everyone's asking for stuff now, but we do have a Patreon up where, we can let you in on get stuff for your giving, or if you just want to give because you're nice, go to wingsoftheeagle.com/donate. Thank you. Commercial over. Bond Servant says, yes, the volcano next to it, Colombo underwater volcano, is the one to watch. It would cause a major tectonic and blowout stuff causing the tsunami. If so, if a volcano erupted underwater, I could see that, I suppose. I don't know. I'd never connected them in my mind. Even underwater one with the pressure, I guess, would, just go upwards and outwards from the top of the volcano. But if it's still underwater, you could definitely get like a ripple. You call that a tsunami, right? Yeah, it could. Sure. Sounds right. I should be able to see all the comments that come in right now. We're actually on the End Time Church app as well, by the way. I encourage you to become a member of End Time Church and get the app. Please do so. Use it. Don't see any there. Okay. Okay, so bottom line is we have some kind of statement by Donald Trump. It's a vision casting, maybe you would call it, in the corporate world. Casting the vision of what you want to happen, and if people want to help you get there, then it can. I don't see that as a thing. Right now, you need too many moving parts. And again, I don't see 1.5 million people voluntarily going anywhere, and no one taking them. Where could they go? Right? Every other, for years and years and years, we had the Syrian civil war, we had the Lebanon civil war before that, we had the Iraq war, we had nothing but refugees, millions and millions of refugees. These countries, Jordan can't take them anymore. Syria can't take them anymore, right? Lebanon can't take them anymore. Turkey can't take them anymore, so they say. That's why they're pouring them up into Europe. There's nowhere for them to go. Or why would even I would, if I were them, somehow. By the way, there are Christians in Gaza. Pray for the church in Gaza. They're not all jihadists, okay? That's just the ones in control. And yeah, they brought it upon themselves because they voted for them, believe it or not. Several years ago, they voted for Hamas. This is what the fruit of that is. I lost my train of thought there. Oh, where are they going to go? So if I was one of them, I'm thinking, well, it sucks here. It certainly does. But we get a lot of aid. A lot of people seem to care about us, even though it never gets to us because Hamas is stealing it. Maybe we can get around to like overthrowing Hamas, getting them out of power, and then, make a life. Because this is our land. And we've always been here. Versus going to, I don't know, Egypt or Jordan or some other place far away where it's not my home and the country sucks just as bad. There's no prospects there. I can't get work. My family can't get fed. I'm homeless or in a shelter in a tent my whole life. Well, how is that different than right now? Right? Just playing not the devil's advocate, but just trying to think through someone who actually is there. How are you going to be? Why would you leave? Where no one wants you. Where, like, how does that work? I'm not comparing it to the American Indian resettlements, forced resettlements. But at least there was a humongous, ginormous country with basically no one in it. For what we call reservations, which are semi-autonomous regions, right? Technically, they're not America, but they're within America. Like there is no place like that. There's no place they can go and be sustained and live and be apart from Gaza and apart from Israel. It's just that doesn't exist. So there's that, right? So you can make statements, you can make proclamations, you can have great, huge visions of Atlantic City Part 2. And by the way, I can tell you, I grew up in New Jersey. I am not far from Atlantic City right now, right where I'm sitting. It's not far. And it's not a good town. The boardwalk area is built up and nice because of all the multi-million dollar hotels, including from Mr. Trump. He has several there, with others as well. And aside from that little boardwalk area, I don't want to live there. It's not attractive. Anyway, so just an aside there. I don't see what the actual result of what the president said the other day is going to actually end up meaning. But for sure, in my mind, for sure, it is not prophetic. Even if it's exactly what he wants, it doesn't move the needle. Unless you want to say, like, who was it, David earlier? Precursor. Okay. We should all be watchmen, right? We should all be, first of all, you can't be a watchman unless you know what the Bible says. Unless you know what God says on something, you don't know what to watch for. That's the point that I'm trying to make, I think. If you don't know what it says, if we don't, or we know half of what it says, or we were told this or that, or we have a reference here, or maybe part of this here, that's not adequate. That's not a serious student. That's not a disciple of Christ. That's not someone who takes his word seriously. That's someone who wants to just get it over with already. And I'm speaking of a guy in school where if I didn't care about the class, which most of them I didn't, I would just do barely enough to get by. I didn't care about it. I read it because I had to. In fact, when I had to read a book I didn't like or was very boring to me, I skimmed it, if anything at all. Or maybe I would just, this is before the internet age. Okay. Many of you know that age. You can just look it up. You had to actually, what are the main points in here, right? Flip through, okay, this character or this, okay, I hope I remember that. Whatever. And go do it that way. I know the main points, but I'm not studying that thing. No way. That's kind of what it is to say, well, isn't that in the Bible? Question mark. Well, you don't need to ask. You can go find it. Yes, teachers are here to help you. God will send us teachers to assist us in that walk. Doesn't mean you're all alone on it, but at the end of the day, you are individually responsible. Yes. So Bondservant has been doing research on the internet right now. Just verified history, she says. The Minoan extinction on Crete that sounds significant, was a result of a tsunami from Santorini. Different name back then, the island. Okay. There you go. So, giant volcano, maybe earthquake, who knows, whatever, but big tsunami. Crete obviously is a big island off of Greece. Between Greece and Israel, basically, right? So that would, if a big wave came over your island, especially back in the ancient times, then you couldn't really go anywhere. You just got washed away. And that was at the time of the Exodus, 1600 BC. There you go. Neat. So it could be a devastating event, sure. Imagine if, I think what you're saying, maybe you're not, but I'm saying it. Imagine if there was some kind of, the idea that the president's talking about and American troops and contractors, and somehow Hamas is gone and the Israeli Gazan population is moved or put elsewhere or whatever. And there was this great, shoreline that can be developed and built up. And then as we're doing that, a big tsunami comes and destroys everything. That would be interesting. And in as much as, like, I think you said, right, how would the Arab world or the Muslim world view that? Yeah. They view that as God being on their side, wouldn't it? I think that's exactly what they would say. It's hard to argue with that, actually. So there you go. Just one final thing. And this applies not just to the current situation in Gaza, but prophecy generally. In that, God has, everyone likes to make it about their own country, especially we Americans. We hate to realize that it's not about us. But there are certain places where God has put his purposes into that plan, like we talked about Turkey earlier, or Iraq, or Iran, or Egypt, right? Those things are in the scriptures. Those are things we can look at. Those are prophetic events. God will do what he said he will do, even using bad, negative, evil nations. The covenant with death and the grave from those surrounding countries must occur. Must. And only with them. There's no alternate plan. There's no plan B where it's actually Russia, China, and the United States who make the covenant, or the United Nations, or some garbage like that. And that is garbage. If God has singled out Turkey, let's say, for a role in the end times, he will make sure that occurs. Do you hear what I'm saying? Habakkuk, read Habakkuk. He will make sure even the most evil anti-Israel country, like back in Habakkuk in the Babylonians, or the Iranians, let's say today, if they have a role, if they are supposed to be a part of this final agreement, and they have to invade other countries to make that all, the Turkey and Iraq, and that whole thing has to be sorted out through war, then it's going to happen. And if you try to stop that, God's going to come against you. Do you hear what I'm saying? If you try to alter God's plans, he will make sure you're taken care of and taken out. You as an individual or a country or what, a group or whatever. Or your voice will be silenced. You are not going to speak on this anymore. That's why, if it's really the plan that Turkey, Iran, and Iraq have to be the main drivers of this, no matter what we try, Christians, Gentiles, other countries, America, the UN, Europe, etc., no matter who tries what, they are going to be the main players, period. It doesn't matter what Donald Trump does. It doesn't matter what Saudi Arabia does. It doesn't matter wars and rumors of wars or whatever you want to think of it. None of that counts. God will make sure that Turkey, Iraq, and Iran unite as one. And they're the ones who drive this. So don't come against it. And I'm talking about even as a teacher. Don't you as a teacher go on X and follow people and like and retweet people that are coming against this idea that those nations have to be together before a temple can come, because not a lot of people are saying that. So don't participate in that. I'm just friendly advice. Stick with God. All right. This is a very Bible prophecy centric update here on the Unsealed podcast. Please support us again. Yes, usually we talk about different things, but we reserve the right to do all this stuff. Okay. So if you like us, if you like what we're doing here, if you think this is new information, if you think this is great, you learned something, you shared this, please do share it right now and give what you can. That's the message. So Gaza, Trump, and prophecy. It's crazy. It's weird. It's definitely fluid right now. We'll see what ends up happening, but keep your eyes on where God tells us to keep our eyes, and then we'll be in good shape. That's the only place where we can be safe. All right. Till next time, Christopher Manti, see you on X and wherever else, and we'll come back as events warrant. Bye.